Orchard Board meeting to order at 7:03 PM.
5:03?
Good Lord. Off to a great start. 5:03 PM. Let someone else approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. Okay, just go around the table.
Aye.
Go ahead.
Aye.
Aye, otherwise. Okay, Open Meetings Act is posted on the wall. Public participation by visitors. Thank you all for attending. Okay. Strategic planning discussion. Orchard site options.
Well, we might discuss what was brought back to us on the table. For what we're talking about.
Yes. Amy and I had talked on Friday and looked at the possibility of making a permanent placement of the high school and middle school. And it was a best case scenario of possibly having the middle school permanently in Clearwater and the high school permanently in Orchard. I came back and shared that with you guys, and I think the outcome was that that's not what we want, that's a nice offer, but we want to share, we don't want ownership. Because then in a few years, we're just gonna have the same issue, correct? Okay. In whatever motion or whatever point we can get to on Wednesday, we would like to make it in the method of an interlocal agreement instead of just a motion which has more binding. So do you just state that in the motion that it is an interlocal agreement? Or is there
We
more
have
to
to get something put together that's going to be more, legal, I guess, than a motion by itself. So we have to get that wording
Okay.
first before we have it. We wouldn't have it on Wednesday.
Okay. But we
Might
can
be an
make,
intent to do that
Okay.
on Wednesday if that's where it goes.
so make the motion with that wording and then get that from the lawyer. Okay, so is that anything we have to sign off on?
You would eventually. I think you'd have to have both sides, both Clearwater and Orchard, pass that and then sign off on it.
We pass it at the meeting in the motion, and then meet later and sign
And
off.
you'd sign it, the actual interlocal agreement.
And our school attorney would do that.
Yeah, you would draw it up.
Okay, so that way whatever we can decide isn't every 2 or 3 years then revisited. In visiting more so with Amy's since then, and like I said, sharing, and that's not what we want. What is it that we want? How is it that we want to move forward? And that's why we had this emergency meeting, because we do have a deadline with a board meeting Wednesday and then NSA a deadline Thursday. So what do we want to go to the meeting with Wednesday night as our proposal? Amy and I'll just keep sharing here. Amy and I talked more this morning, as far as us not wanting to stay the way that it is and them not liking the idea of rotation and them want some permanency to it. They are not against having conversation as far as, Joe made the comment at Clearwater's community meeting that there is a school that has had a rotation, and that's us. So we do have 5 years of data to look at, so maybe we should look at, in those 5 years, the kids have changed, most of them, I guess not all of them, depending on if they were, Blake was a 5th grader, so they've changed 3 times. So we could look at their test scores and their NISA scores and their MAP scores and see if, we certainly don't want to cause harm to any children. And I think administration is in support that you don't see rotation as being detrimental to a child's education.
I don't know that we would see a different test score. I think we got to look at it closely, but what we've looked at every year, which we always look at test scores. I can't say that I've noticed anything that's jumped out at me, but you'd have to look at it a little closer and identify by building or by
Sure.
community, maybe a little more to see. I can't say right offhand that it would be detrimental to them, but maybe more to the lower achieving kids and the higher achieving kids, just my own assumption, but I
Sure.
don't know that rather than we looked at
Okay.
the scores and found out.
Okay. So I guess,
Robert?
you know, what is our goal? Where do we want to get to Wednesday night at the board meeting? Could we make a motion? Because really our original intent was we didn't like the wording of the motion. We didn't like the ambiguity. Can you help me? Ambiguity. Resource thinking. We didn't like the ambiguity in the current motion, original motion that we're currently living. So if we could make a motion Wednesday night that would say at the end of blank blank school year that would cease, and then have ongoing conversations and have a deadline by, and that Amy and I are just throwing out ideas, by this February or this May to have a new permanent plan in place. Because I know how involved we've all been in the last 2 months, and I don't want to continue to have to live this way, but I think it's a deadline and it's an urgency, and we're making a lot of decisions on emotion and time frame, and we don't have to be rushed on a time frame. And I know you can say we've been talking about this for May, but that's hindsight. So I guess what is our goal coming out of Wednesday night? What will you be satisfied with, and what do you think our public wants?
Well, I think we need to try to do this for next year, so we can put this behind us and move on. Because the longer we wait another year, it's just gonna add up more problems. I don't wanna say
I
problems,
know.
but more emotions. I think the sooner, I mean, we've been working at this a long time.
I know we have.
I've had, a lot of us have had, like, sleepless nights.
I know.
And I said, I think we need to move on with this, get this thing done, and move on and start working.
But can we make enough solid decisions? I guess move on. So decide what by when.
Well, I would say before the school year's out, so that we can get going on this,
Okay, so by May.
so that we can have this in place for next year.
Okay, now administration,
Or before May.
I was gonna say, when I visited with them, for planning purposes, they needed to know by March. For contracts, they need to know by February, because contracts are given out in February and due back in March. So teachers are gonna wanna know when they're handed a contract in February, where they're going in March.
Or even by January. I mean, I think we need to make a decision as soon as possible. I just don't want to have to put it off. So before those deadlines, for sure.
Well, then we have to split mine Thursday. Something has to be done before Thursday.
If we're in agreement that we're gonna stay together, then we're fine with Thursday.
Well, and that agreement depends on what other decisions are made, correct? What other agreements you can come to?
If we can make a motion, we're in agreement. Help me here, I'm just speaking. If we can make a motion Wednesday night and agree upon at the end of what school year to dissolve the current motion, the original motion, and devise a permanent plan by February of 2016 or May of 2016, then that would mean we stay together and we're still cyclones, and the NSA deadline means nothing, then we're fine. Correct?
Yeah, your deadline for NSAA, just so everybody's clear on that, we've got that extended deadline, so we've got basically, I'm gonna email them after the meeting, so it's gonna be Wednesday night, whatever time we get done, if it's midnight, it's midnight, I'm gonna email them when we meet, that's the agreement I gave them. So
Okay.
it's gonna be that night, their meeting is in the morning on Thursday. their board meeting down there in Lincoln. So we need to know for that purpose whether we are going to co-op at all or not. You know, I need to give them a heads up, this is what we're doing. So plan on having a Clearwater Orchard football team or not having a Clearwater Orchard football team. It's going to be one or the other. So that's what I need to respond to them by that deadline. The end of the November deadline, November 30th, that is more 8-man, 11-man, 6-man. That's the difference between the two.
So if we decide not to co-op football for next year, do we not have either one of us have a football team, or that's what can be decided until the end of the month?
Right. If there is no co-op between the two schools, there isn't going to be any co-op with anybody else either, just to
Right.
make sure everybody's clear
Right.
on that, then you are saying you're on your own for whatever it is,
Okay.
whether that's 8-man, 6-man, 11-man.
I wasn't sure if that meant neither one of us have a football team, it's either co-op or nothing,
That's right.
as of the 12th.
You
But
would
that's
be-
not correct, we would have till the,
You would have to tell them then to get you a schedule. If it's 8-man or 11-man, they decided. If it's 6-man, there's a 6-man association that decides that schedule.
But there is an option of 2 different teams. I thought at one time we said there was just one opening.
I think you could still have the 2 teams up until November 30th.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I understand. Nathan said what you got too. I know Nathan talked to him as well.
And it stays that way for 2 years.
That's a 2-year agreement on those schedules, yes. Yes.
okay, I've asked this before and I'm gonna ask it again. Okay, in my mind, we've only rotated all of the students once. Individual grades have rotated because of class, the fifth
Middle
graders,
school,
obviously,
right.
right, the Clearwater fifth graders rotate in every year.
That's
and,
correct.
Okay, so as a whole, we have only rotated once, because the first year Clearwater came over here, so
Just
it
the
wasn't a
Clearwater kids,
full
right.
high school move. So we've only done a full middle school, full high school move once, right? Am I looking at that
I think
correct?
that's correct, yes.
Okay. So I want to ask, I know you guys say you don't support rotation, but would it be? But would
They
it
would
be?
support it.
Okay, yeah.
You didn't like the 2 years.
Didn't like the
Yes,
two-year.
they didn't like the
Okay,
two-year.
so what if we try a 3-year rotation, high school back here in Orchard, middle school, and then flop it one more time for 3 years. So it would be a 6-year, and then we can compile data, see what works, what doesn't. Maybe after that period of time, we'll find out that we don't like the rotation. To me, we haven't actually done a full rotation enough to know whether it works or whether it doesn't. And maybe after we do it 2 more times, maybe we'll find that that isn't what works. Maybe we do need to select a permanent site. But are we to the point where we need to select a permanent? That's part of what's wrong now here, because in our eyes, the way the numbers play out, it is permanently set in Clearwater. For a 21-year stretch, as far as the way the numbers look now, 21 years, starting 3 years ago and up through grade, or age 0 right now, it's a 21-year stretch that it's in Clearwater without ever coming back here to Orchard. So is that out of line to ask it? Can we try it and see? I mean, we keep saying, and I don't have anything, I'm not being nasty here, but we keep talking about the SPED kits that we made. But has anybody questioned whether what we're doing now is hurting the majority of the students that do have to do that extra travel, that never get to come home? Are we hurting the majority of our kids by not giving them the chance to come back? Our kids have to travel so many miles. How do we know that we're not hurting those kids? maybe that extra hour, half hour is cutting into their sleep and they're not able to perform to their best ability because they have to travel extra. They get to come home later, so they don't have that extra time at home at night. I mean, is that a bad way to look at this?
I don't think it's a bad way. I think rotation has effects on everyone, obviously. When you do that, and having to travel isn't ideal. Obviously, the best thing would be to have everybody in their home site, travel to the shortest distance that you could, get up later, latest you can get up, et cetera. I think everybody would prefer that. But that brings other situations with our numbers of kids that we have, I think programs and other things, I think are going to be in trouble if we do that, to be honest. I think our class size or program sizes are going to be not where we want them to be. If, I guess this is my personal opinion, if that's an option that both sides can accept, both sides can agree to, I'm for it. Because I think we need to do whatever we can to keep this thing together. And if that, I think it kicks it down the road a little bit. It kicks your decision down the road, obviously, about probably 5 years, something like that. And I think you want to make a decision before 6 years are out, obviously. But if that's what it takes to keep this thing together, like I said, I'll support it. And I'll support anything we come up with because I think we need some agreement on something. And I know when we had Amy and Candace in here on Friday, rotation wasn't considered very hard because it was tough to come from the Clearwater angle on things on supporting rotation. So that's going to have to be a change on their thinking as well to that. I don't like that we're maybe delaying the decision, but it does give us a chance, like you said, Terry. We can maybe look at it a little closer and say, well, gosh, yeah, we are maybe affecting this kid a little differently than we originally thought, or whatever it is. And other things, factors that we're not considering there, that maybe we can adjust a little bit and make better. And we talked about the coaching things as far as getting kids home earlier and on time, and those type of things. We can definitely do that. Maybe there's other things too, I don't know. But that would give us that opportunity to consider that. So I guess what I'm saying is if we can get both sides to support it, I think.
Then would that be something that we could put in the interlocal agreement? That at the end of 5 years, because you have to have, I would assume you would want to start discussing at the end of 5 years so that you're discussing it through that 6th year, so that by the time the 7th year rolls around, you either stay the way we are or we have a new plan in place. And it's not a rush decision, and by then we would know whether it works. Is it detrimental to kids? We don't know if it's hurting kids.
If you do end up with that, I would advise that you be very specific,
Right.
timeline-wise, what you're going to do. So it's clear to everybody, Clearwater, Orchard, communities, et cetera. We know what to expect, because I think that's a big thing. I think we need to know what to expect. Teachers need to know what to expect.
Right.
Communities need to know what to expect down the road. So I would say, yeah, we do need to be specific.
Well, I think even when we were talking at David and Group, and we had even mentioned, and you mentioned here, if this has been a learning experience for even our schools, like, you said we added, what did we add? When the parents come over.
The home run time.
The home run
Oh,
time.
and
then
fourth
to bring
grade
the fourth
orientation
grade
for the fifth
orientation.
graders.
The first years, they didn't do that, so the kids probably were going into a situation like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where I'm supposed to go. It's a learning experience for all of us. We're trying to learn to adjust to all of this. We've got to do some adjusting just to make this thing work. I mean, we've got to try to keep this thing together and working. It's got to come on both sides.
And another big concern,
No, yeah.
another big concern I've heard is that maybe we'll lose teachers. But we have 10 teachers traveling now, am I correct?
I think it's actually 11. We figured
11,
it out.
and if
Yeah.
I'm correct, I believe 7 of those are original hires from the Orchard District that are traveling, I believe so. It's 6 or 7.
That could be.
And I haven't heard any rumors of any kind of any one of those teachers threatening to quit because they have to travel. They know they've got a job, they're gonna do what they have to keep their job. So I would assume that the original Clearwater staff, I'm not trying to divide Orchard Clearwater, but that was in the original Clearwater district 5 years ago, I mean, are they threatening to? I haven't heard anybody threaten to not sign their contract if they have to rotate. Have any of
I haven't heard that as far as anybody coming in and saying to me, you know, if this happens, we're gonna do this, but I don't think anything's been laid out for them yet either, where they know specifics about any plan. I think they're questioning, of course, what's going to happen and how it's going to affect them, but, you know, I think if you have a plan in place, maybe it helps them to know a little bit more. Yeah, we may, I'm not saying we're not gonna lose
Right.
teachers, we lose teachers every so often regardless,
Right.
different situations, so you adjust a little bit, you try to find some people to replace them if you can.
But out of the 11 that are traveling this year, have any of them said, if I have to do this again next year, I'm quitting?
Not to me.
Okay, so that's a third of our staff that's traveling out of 36 staff members, and they're okay with it. So, I mean, I don't know that that's an argument either, that our staff wouldn't support this.
Has anybody had any staff call in?
No, I have not had any staff member.
I've had 2 call me. And both said the same thing. Please keep the kids together and we'll do as we always have what's asked of us. So, for whatever that's worth.
You've got me.
Yeah.
True.
I think it sometimes staff would say, and you know, we have some staff that travel long before we were reorganized. It's a bit of a hardship to travel. It puts another piece into what you're doing. But we also built things in for an extra time period and some of those things that
I was gonna
try
say.
to make it a little bit less
Or we
work.
pay them to travel,
Right.
or,
Right.
yeah, there are other incentives to thank them for doing that. And it is, I think sometimes we have a convenience because it is 13 miles. It's not other schools 35 miles, you know, whatever that
That's what makes it doable.
makes it doable, yes. And so nobody else does it. But maybe that's a good thing that we can.
You know, and we expect the kids to travel, and that's okay. Is it such a bad thing to ask the staff to, you know, a handful of the staff to do the same thing?
I think 3 years gives them a little more time too with that, but they don't have to travel maybe 2 years or every year, whatever it might be. And 5th and 6th grade again would be the ones that would of course have to move lock, stock, and barrel with everything there. That's the biggest hardship.
And one thing, you know, I know that they discussed, there was a lot of work moving back and forth, let's say the shop was a lot of work. Now, I have, since the meeting that they had, there were further there was concerns about, I have had quite a few working people come up to me and say, if you guys need help, we will be willing to get trailers and help. I mean, they said, just ask. I mean, I think
We should
people
help
are-
as a board, yeah, I think
I
too.
think there was,
Definitely.
and I don't think last time that a lot of people knew that that was going on, but when they were moving in, and then I think people are willing to help through that. I don't,
Write their names down.
you know, the men's club got volunteered again, so
There'd be 20 guys there for sure.
Okay,
maybe not sure what it was, very well, she said.
Yeah.
so I think looking at the time frame and visiting, you know, with Amy, and I appreciate that her and I can communicate. I guess it's more specifically, what are we gonna be satisfied with Wednesday night? Because I think they're looking at making that motion, but not with all of this necessary detail, you know, to dissolve the current agreement at such and such time, and then talk about a new plan, or have a new plan to, you know, can we do that? Can we look at a 3-year and a 3-year rotation to see what happens, or look at a permanent site or something else we haven't, could we then talk about that in December, January? Good. You're okay. That would give us 3 more months to decide that.
The other thing I'm
To
concerned
not-
about is if we take their argument, they want to give us the high school.
Right.
I feel that, I don't want that to come across that if we say, yes, we're taking that, well, let's go Marie to Orchard do this because they wanted the high school. That is not our
Right.
intent. We have never said that we have wanted that high school.
And I think they
And
gave,
you guys can agree with that. We have never come Cross and we wanted
Not
the high
permanent-
school.
not
Not
permanent.
permanently, no.
No, because it's
Right.
not
Because it's-
fair to their
No,
It's
students.
not
doesn't
fair
fix
to
it.
their students, and I'm afraid in a few years
Right.
that this happened.
And I
It is a
think-
lot of traveling for kids, I mean,
And I think that was just one option that Amy and I tried to come to that day, and I think their board would like further discussion. They're not saying that they're gonna put the stamp on that at all Wednesday night, but if we could get to where we,
because I
And
don't
dissolve the-
want the high school all the time, because I look at their kids and I'm thinking that would not be fair to their children. to
Right.
Have to travel
right,
forever of the day over here for, I mean.
Because you're gonna have the same thing we've got. You're gonna have your student that's 3 blocks or
A mile from town.
3 doors down from the school and always have to come here. It's
Yeah.
not fair to their kids, and that's not what we want.
We've got to look out for all the kids
Yes.
instead of just like which of these things or of these things. I'm thinking overall picture, we haven't done what's best for everybody. And all the teachers like this too.
I would be open to that, talking about when to dissolve, like if it would dissolve at the end of this year, and then taking maybe a couple months to think, but whatever we would decide, I would want to go into effect next year. So if it takes us till February to figure that out together, then I'm fine with that. I mean, I think that would be
I don't want this to
okay,
drag out
but
another year.
it's got to happen next year.
okay. So we're,
And I guess would it be hard for you guys to ask staff that you think that might not want to travel? Do you know of any staff that might not want to travel or?
I don't know if you could say anybody would jump up and say, please let me travel, but I haven't, because, but I don't know for sure of anybody that said to me, I will not travel, if it comes to that, I will not travel. Last year, Ms. Morton and I had to go to a couple of different family members that had never traveled before and asked them to travel, and they did so.
Faculty's been pretty good about doing things as needed to make things work. And they recognize that this is important to keep this together. I would be fairly confident, I think, in saying that they would do that anyway. So I guess
Well, that's, I guess,
I'm not as
if the-
concerned about that.
If the concern was that if they weren't going to travel, we need to start looking, what I mean?
And you won't know until February, March, as March 16th, I think is our due date on that. Then you would know a little more about that.
It's only fair for them to know what to expect for next year.
I agree.
So does anybody here not want to co-op football? Put everybody on the spot here, is there, is,
Maybe be clear about what you mean by co-op football. Are you saying,
Well,
are we
that-
still
I mean,
together
that's-
as a school or as a
I
co-op, which
guess
is
that's
different?
true.
You don't need a co-op if you're still together.
If
as
you're
a
still
school.
together, we don't, do we?
is there anybody that doesn't want to stay together? Don't all jump up at once.
Don't think that was our intent when we started this.
No.
At all. Our intent was not to split it
No.
up. And I don't know that that's our intent now. I mean, that would be the worst case
Yes.
scenario.
Thank
If
you.
that's the only thing we can come up with, that's the worst case scenario.
Yes, I agree.
And I'm hoping it comes to that.
Me either. I think we have huge successes. There's not been one kid in complaining in the 5 years, other than us, that yes, they get home late and have to get up early, I understand that. But as far as, I hate going to school in this building, and look at the successes we have. And I'm not just talking about football tomorrow night and the opportunities that I think that they have, but you look at our band program, how far that has come, and you look at our speech program. I mean, I can't even begin to fathom being responsible for tearing that apart. So yeah, I hope that is our worst case scenario, and that we can work, keep it together. Okay.
resolved. Whether it's February, March, but it needs to be done. I think us together is probably better than separate, for sure. And hopefully we can achieve that. I don't know.
Where are we at if we can't come to an agreement?
As far as school-wise, or as far as the football-wise? I guess there's, I mean, there's a lot of different layers to
Yeah.
it to some extent. And some of that, I don't know, because until we know where both sides are at on this, if we can't come to an agreement, or both sides wanting to go up, I don't know the answer to that. Both boards are going to decide that piece. You know, as far as then, if we split apart as schools, Unified District's going to have some say in that. I mean, you're on that board as well, so, you know, we know it's going to cost us more dollars to have two separate schools, so that is something they'll consider, as well as other things, obviously, there'll be a lot of other things to consider, you know, to good education, et cetera. I can't answer that.
I mean, I hope we can come to an agreement of the rotation and state co-oping and that kind of thing, but I'm just trying to, what do we do if we can't? What's our step?
Now, as far as talking about the expense, when you've got $1 billion valuation, it costs an extra $200,000-300,000 a year to have two separate schools.
And make it work.
That's peanuts. I mean, that just, so, I don't know that we even need to worry about the cost of splitting up, because, like I said, $1 billion, I tried to do the math on it quick enough to do it, but I don't think it even amounts to any, what is $1 billion? How much what's it take on $1 billion to generate $300,000?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not gonna be enough of a tax increase that it's even gonna be noticed.
In today's finances with the school, I'd say, yeah, I hope it stays that way. I don't know what next year or the year after is going to bring. We may face some tougher choices then. So, I can't answer for the board. Terry, you're on the board as well. You can speak a little more than I can, because you'll be the one making those decisions. But,
And I think looking at the levy, I mean, we have one of the lowest ones around that I've found. You know, New and Grove has one that's probably better, but I mean, I think ours is about half of what O'Neill is. You know, so if you have to add .0001.
Right, yeah. You know, we're already putting twice as much into the general fund as the lowest contributing school district. I can't see that us asking for an extra $300,000 when we already contribute 3.1, that I don't think that should be a factor. But, I mean, like you said, you know, we might be talking .65 instead of .62 or .63. I mean,
And that's good, it's
I
not.
don't think it's a big impact.
No,
On
that's-
tax dollars, but it's not what we, that's not the
Right.
I was
direction.
gonna say,
we
that
want
I
to
don't
go.
think the monetary cost
I was gonna
is
say-
as big an issue as the
I don't think
cost
so
in
either.
other ways.
Yes, it's good, that just proves it's not about money,
No, it's not.
but what it would do to the kids. Yeah. Okay,
What does an interlocal agreement get us that we don't have now? I mean, I know it's in writing, but I guess I don't want to get us in a position where 3 years down the road, somebody's saying, hey, this is totally unfair and we hate you because of it. You know, I don't want to let somebody out of it. You know.
I think it does give you that more stability. Now, any agreement obviously can be reached and changed down the road, but we know that. With the right lawyer, you can challenge anything. But I do think it gives you a little bit more confidence in that type of agreement where it's written out and it's plain and you have a timeline on it. And you have, you know, plans for
Something
what you,
spelled out.
yeah, I think it's more spelled out. And that probably gives you more direction on what you're doing. So I think it's probably harder to violate that type of agreement than one that's not as clearly spelled out. So that's what I would say we do, just straightforward. So.
It'd be more like our unified agreement, where it's
Exactly.
difficult to,
Exactly.
yeah. But right now, I think there's some people out there too that have the conception that it is a contract, when actually it's not. It was just a motion, and it didn't go any farther than a motion in the minutes. It's not down on paper, it's not registered with the state, it's not, it was just a motion. And I think a lot of people have a misconception about that.
It's not the same as our
Right,
unified agreement
yeah.
would be. That was more of a written contract. This would not.
What kind of term do you usually see on that?
On an interlocal,
Yeah.
you can set that, you can know what you want to do. Now, unified was pretty spelled out because that's in law.
Right.
That's a 7-year agreement, that's as far as you can go with that. As far as an interlocal, and we'd have to talk to a lawyer about that, but I think there's a little more leeway with that. So it depends on what the board wants to do with that. Okay.
Lincoln.
The main reason we wanted to get together, I guess, with the board presidents and the administrators was to try to get some direction for Wednesday going in, so we had at least a plan, going in and not have to start from scratch. So I think that was the intent with that, and that's why we did get together. And I, had a lot of discussion, a lot of good discussion, a lot of options considered with that, and that was one of the options that you brought up, Terry, was maybe another trial rotation of sorts with going both sides again with the high school, middle school. So that's kind of what we had in mind. I guess I would maybe consider this to be somewhat the same thing, some direction going in, or at least the Orchard Board, that you know what you want to bring up, what you want to consider, what you don't want to consider as well. Maybe to, if nothing else, it saves you having to cover ground that's already been covered. So that's what I think you need to do with this, and give yourselves direction. So I don't know if you're clear on that now. I guess that's up to you to decide whether you're clear or not, or where you want to be on Wednesday.
So, I want to make sure I understand it, but our intent going in to Wednesday is to dissolve the current agreement and have a plan in place within 3 months, basically.
Dissolve the current agreement at the end of the 2015-16 school year, right? 15-16.
This would be
That's- yeah.
15, 16, so that's what you're looking at.
And then have a new plan in place by February 14th.
For the 16-17 school year.
Right. Yeah, I know, that's why I was trying to make sure I said that right, since I can't tell that.
That's what I have in mind.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm willing to sit down at the table and see if there's anything else out there.
Right. Okay.
There may be another option that Clearwater comes up with that hasn't been brought here to this
Right.
table, or someone else may think of something here at the next meeting, so it doesn't mean anything can't be brought up.
Yeah.
Does that mean though that we have to come to a decision by February of 2016? I mean, if you want a
think we need
deadline on
to,
that, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
For our staff, it would.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe it can be done in a month, I don't know.
And if we dissolve it as of 2015, 2016, there has to be a plan in place for the next year. We have to.
Unless they need to come up with something else to
Yeah,
work.
of course,
It'd be nice to have it done.
Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to come up with some Wednesday, because if you want to do football, or you're gonna have to say together, or,
Well, by making that motion, we're saying that we are gonna stay together and we are gonna make this work, and we're
oh, okay.
gonna come together as two
Okay.
boards to,
The plan would be
to-
just how that's going to
to
look.
figure out the
Okay,
details.
okay.
That motion
Okay,
is,
we're good.
yeah,
I was thinking-
yeah. That motion
So
would
then
say,
basically, the
Because-
next few months, it'd be talking about if we want
The
a permanent
details.
site or a
Yes.
rotation, or what that would look like for next year.
right, that motion would say we're staying together and give us 3 months to figure out the details.
Do we all agree that there needs to be some kind of change made?
Well, we'll dissolve the current agreement, so that.
Right, but that doesn't mean that.
Oh,
it
to
won't
not
stay-
repeat.
It won't, doesn't mean that it won't stay the way it is.
No, we
come up with a new, right, I see what you're saying. Come up with a new plan going forward, yeah. I see what you're
We can't
saying.
come up with a plan, is my
Yeah,
fear.
what
If we
happens.
can't agree on something and we've already agreed to stay.
We've already agreed to agree.
Yeah, we've already agreed that we're gonna agree.
Right.
I would hope I don't know. I would hope that we are smart enough people and that we care about the right things. I don't know, and maybe that's me just having faith in all of you that we'll make that work, that we'll have to make it work. We have to. I mean, yeah.
But do we have to make it work so bad it stays the way it is?
No, we're not gonna leave that as an option.
We're not
No.
gonna leave that as an
No.
option. We can't. Something
No,
has to
not
be-
after all this.
There's,
Oh,
yeah.
please.
Okay.
Don't skip to our proceedings.
Yeah.
Oh, I enjoy having you.
Don't be nice.
Okay. So we don't have, yeah.
Can I ask what their reasoning was? They said they would just give us the high school and they would take us. Did they have a reason behind it?
I think now in visiting with Amy, they'd be real willing to look at the rotation, look at the data, what's out there specifically at pulling random students. Before, the reason they didn't like rotation is they didn't want to see their kids as guinea pigs. They didn't want to put them at that risk or take that chance. They just thought there was too many what ifs to try that. And that's why it was just better to have one spot, know they have to travel. But like I said, that was just a best case scenario. I'm not sure that that's even where they want to go right now. I think they want to get to this point. They want to get to the place where we can talk about the details. Let's agree to dissolve and go forward and talk. Yes, no, wink, maybe.
Because I just can't imagine that they would all be on board with that.
Right,
I just don't think the
Right.
public would like it, and it's not fair
True,
to their kids,
true.
it's not fair to the
Right.
public. So
Right.
I was just so shocked when I heard it.
yes, yes, yes. And I think, yeah, after more talking, it would be best if we all just talked and came up with what the better plan would be. Yep, you're right.
Somehow we need to get, once we get the decision made, we need to get beyond where we're at right now, because I think there is a lot of animosity and there's some serious division that's happening that we have got to heal. We got to get over that.
Yes, we
And
do.
we need to come to
A happy place.
a calm agreement.
A positive agreement that works for
Yeah,
everybody
I like-
involved and let the past go.
Yeah. we've
And
got
then
to.
start working on other things
And
that
start
we've.
working on the positive that will help everybody, the kids involved,
Yeah.
especially the kids.
And get back to a good working unit atmosphere.
100% agree with that, Dave. That's a major goal to try to get to, like we work through all this.
We have to, because otherwise I see what we have worked so hard at since 1999. I see this jeopardizing unification seriously. It's going to have serious repercussions with the unified if
That's right.
something doesn't, yeah.
And I think that trust is a big part of this. We've got to get trust back amongst all of our, I think, board members, community, et cetera. We just got to, somehow we got to find ways to do that, start working on that.
And maybe, I don't know, it would be better if we do it like, I know, I can't remember what was the, why do we have, what's the government system for one? Can't we just have it all, so we don't have two from this one? I mean, that's always.
Still the schools and state
Is there
departments,
something,
Mr.
you
Martin.
explain it?
Yeah,
State
it was more of an
identification.
ND Department of Ed deal, since we are not together with the PK4. They need to distinguish between the two, and so you can't both be Clearwater Orchard Elementaries. You got to have one be one and one be another.
Because when we look at things such as scores, there's Orchard site PK4 scores, and there's, right, so, like you have what, 4 different schools.
PISA's done that way, AYC's done that way. I mean, it's just the way they keep track of things right now, so it's kind of dictated by them. We could probably be Clearwater Orchard at Orchard, or Clearwater Orchard at Clearwater somehow. You have to make a distinction between the two.
So that everybody is Clearwater Orchard.
I don't remember what you told me. Also, what you said. Yeah, fine, what you.
I think we're all in agreement we want this going. I mean, we don't want to see this going, we just need to understand the. Everybody agree with
It sure is nice to talk together.
That's why I was sitting there
Yes.
at the kitchen table with Tara Friday night, and I said, this isn't working.
What we
We have got to
accomplished
get
in-
all 8 of us in the same room at the same time, because
50
I am
minutes.
making
Yeah.
30 phone calls.
Well, and your head's just spinning, like, she
Right.
said this and he said this.
Yeah.
And I wonder that, and yeah,
Mhm.
50
Yeah,
minutes, this
so
was worth sitting down.
Thank you for doing this, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
me
This
as well.
Just really was necessary.
So how does Wednesday look? Just, who makes a motion? Whoever wants to make a motion, whoever wants to make it first.
You're talking about motion on the agreement. I think you're gonna have discussion, obviously,
Discussion
before that,
first.
leading
And
up to
actually
that.
agree on that before the
Right.
motion's made.
Right, yeah.
I don't think you just want one side doing that, obviously. I think
Right.
you want agreement on that, if that's where it heads, so.
Like we generally do want to talk about,
Right.
you just read my mind. Yep.
And at that point, us 4 unified members, we wouldn't vote, we can't,
Not
can
an
we?
advisory meeting. You would just be
Right,
there as
we would just be
listeners.
there to
Yeah.
discuss.
You could be invited into the discussion.
But I don't want to make a motion, so it needs to come from the other 8.
You can,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, I wanted to make sure.
You have to be advertised as an
So-
original meeting
Okay.
in order for you to be able to do this.
So will the 12 of us be at the table, or will the 4 unified members, will we be in the audience talking, or how are we going to do that when we get to this discussion? I mean, I don't feel like, I don't need to sit at your table for the whole board meeting. I don't-
At any point in the discussion, they can ask for direct commentary from an unified board member, even after public participation, because they can be invited to give their input.
But at this point, when we get to that point on the agenda, could they come down?
I think you can invite them onto the table.
Yeah.
To me, it would make sense to do
That's what I
that.
thought, too.
Yeah. It's kind of like I get invited in to
Right.
participate when there's things that I need to talk about, like unified update or whatever it may be. You come and you talk about the topic, you maybe take part in that discussion. And if it's something that's just general business, you kind of back off, let the general business go on. So I think it'd be the same type of thing with this. Probably the only item you.
And then when that discussion's over, then we flow back into the public, into the crowd.
Yes, that's what I
Okay.
think.
That's what I would prefer to do myself. That's just myself, so.
Okay. Wednesday night at 7? In the gym? Face the crowd? Yes. Yep. That's it, we'll adjourn at 5:52 PM.